Good evening, YouTube. It's your buddy Chop It On coming at you with another hockey version of Chop Talk, brought to you by the one, the only, DFSArmy.com, where everything is covered. MMA, NASCAR, all of it this week. EPL kicked off. We've got golf that kicked off. Baseball still running. NBA's coming. NFL, of course, we already know Week 5's on the way, but we're going to talk a little bit of hockey today. It's my second favorite DFS sport, probably tied with football. I like baseball best, but I mean, hockey is a freaking blast. If you've never given it a shot, it's as volatile as baseball, so I will warn you, don't play with a lot of your bankroll because you will kiss it goodbye. Not that you can't win a lot of money there either. It's just that the extremes are so low and so high. You can go on a long down streak, not even realize it, and then run out of money before you ever hit your hot streak. It's just that's the way baseball and hockey are built. So we play a little bit lighter with our bankrolls, but what I want to show you is a little bit of our tools here at DFS Army. So head down into the comments section, click the link that makes you a VIP. You're going to want to unlock this bad boy. It's one of the coolest tools in all of DFS for NHL for sure, and it shows you an awful lot. So let's kind of dig through, talk about today's slate a little bit. I'm not going to go player by player, game by game, any of that. I'm just going to show you how I picked some of my teams based on what I already know today. I know that by judging by these big odds, let's do this. Let's run over to RotoGrinders really quick. It's a little bit faster way to show you this. I'm looking for big odds for goalies, right? That's typically what I do. Ooh, minus 260. Matt Murray looks like he's in play. 113, 133. I'm looking for great. 290. Hello, Freddie Anderson in play. He's the same price as Matt Murray too. 180 in play. 150 maybe. On the road, not so much. 120 no. 177 maybe. Anything over about 175 or so is what I'm looking for. Those are the ones I'm going to key on. Mike Smith, good spot. Anchor, nice hammer play. Vancouver's not intimidating, especially on the road. They're not a real high-powered offensive team. They're a little more of a defensive team, so we kind of try to stay away from them a little bit at home. But out on the road, we don't really strike a lot of fear in us. So Mike Smith's definitely in play. I would say that Matt Murray's in play. People don't like him, but with that big Vegas support, he's in play. I would say that Freddie Anderson's in play. Those are the goalies that I'd be looking at tonight, and I try to pay down where it makes sense. So if you wanted to pull a Mike Smith at 7,900 on Fanduel, go for it. If not, 8,400 for Murray and Freddie Anderson is probably where you would be. The main thing that I'm trying to do is what offenses am I after? Because where these favorites are so big, if you know from NFL, from implied team totals, you take the point spread, say 50, you divide it in half, 25 and 25, you subtract off half of the spread. For the underdogs, say it was a 10-point spread, we'd subtract 5 points off of the 25, we'd get a 20. We'd add the 10-point spread back to the 20 and get 30 for the favored team. So you've got 30 points and 20 points adding to 50, which gives you your game total. The bigger the spread gets, the more extreme it gets. The more the favorite is supposed to score and the less the underdog is supposed to score. If it was a closer game like a minus 110 or a minus 105 like this, that's why you see the 3.07 implied and the 293 implied. Whereas here you see a 2.2 and a 3.7. See that spread? So we can use these big odds and these bigger totals to kind of, without even calculating this number, just kind of inherently know that it's going to be big on the favorite. Whereas over here they're going to be kind of even 3 and 3. Over here you're going to get close to 4. And that's what you're looking for. So Pittsburgh is an offense worth targeting tonight. Almost implied to score 4. Maple Leafs minus 290. Also, that's why they're a 386. Implied to score a lot of points. That's why this is closer together here because the odds aren't quite so great. Is that making sense? 3-1 versus 1.3 to 1. So your odds are not, or your implied goals is not as many. I want goals scored. I want to target teams that are supposedly going to score a lot of goals. Toronto's in play. Looking at the Lightning in play, 3.75. It doesn't mean that Nashville's not in play, and it doesn't mean that the Blues aren't in play. It just means that I'm keying on those other 3 offenses first. I love the Avalanche, but you know what? They're not as highly implied, so they're not going to be as chalky tonight. They're not whatever. Calgary's in play. These are the teams I'd be focused on, these 3 or 4 offenses. And now what I'm going to try and do in my cash type games is take high floors. What are my floors? High shots, blocked shots. Those are the predictive numbers that typically happen every night. Goals, kind of fluky. You know, if biscuit goes in the basket, that's great. But honestly, I'm looking more for who puts a ton of pucks on the net. And the way I find that is I go into our research station and I see a lot of these same odds and a lot of the power play penalty kill numbers in a nice organized, neat fashion. Let me drop that down just a smidge so that we can fit most of this on the same page. You see the over-under, you see the implied team totals. It was just a little bit faster to show you the other way. I could have done it this way if I'm getting comfortable as the season goes, a little bit more comfortable. We're bringing back one of these tabs down here, one of these sheets that will show you not only these numbers, but will also show you the projected lines, the top line, the second line, etc., etc., etc. So that's a good thing because it's going to show us at a glance what we're looking at. So what I do after this, I look at these for some goalies, I look at these for some generic numbers, and then I, who's hot, who's not in their, say, last 10 games, wherever those numbers might be, they should be on here. There we go, last 10 home, last 10 whatever. You know, this is still overlapping from the 17-18 season as opposed to this coming season because we only got a game or two under our belt. These numbers will normalize over the next week. I go straight into the skaters tab. And what I'm looking for here is I want to find my target teams. I know if I'm looking at Pittsburgh and Toronto and, who else did I mention? Pittsburgh, Toronto, good Lord, who was the other one? Pittsburgh, Toronto, Tampa Bay. I know I'm going to pay high prices for a lot of these guys, right? Because they're just the big, chalky, powerful offenses, and I know that. So I'm going to need value. Where am I going to find my value? In one case, I'm going to start with my goalie and try and find the value there in a good, safe spot. Then I'm going right to my defense. I want to stack lines, not so much in cash in that I'm stacking all three of the top line or whatever. I try to overlap some. We'll talk about that in other videos. But what I'm looking for is maybe two guys, not three, maybe two. And I'll show you a little bit of how I find it. But I'm going to start looking at defense first. And I'm going to scroll over because that's where a lot of my cheaper guys are. I can look through the season stats if I want, sort by shots, sort by blocks, kind of start looking, or I can come over here to the last 10 games, which is what I really like doing when these numbers become current and get in there and balance out a little bit. But under the projection side, you want to have some fun. Shots on goal plus blocked shots. That's my metric that combines the two together since they're weighted equally for points. A guy who pumps on a lot of shots and a guy who gets a few blocks, gets in the way of a few pucks, is going to have a decent floor. So just add them together, and you can find guys that either block a lot of shots or shoot a lot of pucks. And then you find guys in between, and they all have similar floors. Sometimes the guys that don't shoot a ton but block a lot have very cheap prices, and that's a good thing for a $3,500, $4,500 defenseman who isn't really offensive anyway. That's in a lot of cases where you don't have to pay those huge prices for those Brent Burns. You don't have to pay those huge prices for those guys. You can focus on the guys that are more liable to do the scoring that night. I mean, in the case of Brent Burns, of course, you would run him out there if you could afford to, but I would rather spend up at the center and the wing spots where I can and pay down a little bit in defense because I can get a decent floor, a very predictable, very solid floor with these shot on goal and blocked shot metrics. So I would sort by that number. First, I'd go descending order. I'd bring all these jokers to the top. And these are the guys that are running the decent floor, that are projected for a very high shot and block total tonight. So now I'm going to scroll back over here. And I'm going to talk about defensemen. And I'm going to look. I don't want these two guys that are not in the way. I want guys with the cheap prices. I'm looking for, there's a 4,000, Ryan Pulak. Great value. Look down here, a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower. Brent Seabrook, decent value. Boychuk, decent value. Looking, oh, 4,100. Matheson, great value. 4,300. I would also double check, and I know it's hard to see on this tiny little screen. I apologize for that. But where did Matheson go? He's not on a power play. He's not on the top one or two, defensive pairings. So he's probably not going to get a lot of ice time. That's interesting for such a high floor and not getting the ice time. You want him on the first or second line. You want him on a power play, most typically. So when I looked at, Edler 5,000, pretty darn good. Highest shot and block floor on the slate. Top line, top power play line will log a ton of ice time. Great spot. If you want to save a little bit more off of that, you can start dropping down, to your Trebas, to your Pulak. Pulak's a great one. He gets some ice time in the second pairing, gets some, power play time. So there are chances that he's involved when the power play goals get scored. Here's another one in Ryan Ellis, who's relatively cheap. Looking down, looking down, looking down, looking down. That's what I'm going to do. I don't want to see any red X's. I can also close them out on our tool by hitting these two. And I'll show you how this works with the centers and the wings. When I turn him off and I go to centers and I go to wings, hold that control key down and you can, click, click, click and turn them all on and leave these off. I will do the same thing over here. Click on the top line, control click on the second line, and now what I've got is some power play stuff. I don't want to see any red X's on those power play. I typically don't have them, which is good except in a few spots. I'm still sorted by the floor, if you will. Might have to resort that one. There it goes. And now I've got my centers and my wings. I don't know why it just did the centers. It should have the wings in there. First and second pairing. That's really interesting. Really interesting. I don't know why it's doing that. Let's turn them on and see if they kick over to the other. Whenever you're ready. It's messing me up a little bit. I don't know why it just got stuck. But what I'm trying to find again is I'm trying to find some value in here because I know that I'm going to need the value. If I go ahead and just reset the bad boy, I'm trying to find value because I know that when I've got a couple of defense spots that are going to be in the value side of things, I'm probably going to need a winger, and then I can probably really attack some chalkier spots. And that's what I'm going to try and do in cash. I want access to Pittsburgh, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin. I want access to Austin Matthews, John Tavares. I want access to those types of guys, Kuznetsov or Kucherov in Tampa Bay. Those are the guys that I want pieces of. So when I kick onto the wing here, and I want that decent floor, I want them on the top line or two. Change that back and try and kick that in again. And then I'm looking for those higher shot and block floors, but I want those cheaper prices. You can see you've even got value numbers and you've got consistency ratings over here in this tool. It's a badass tool. So while that goes ahead and kicks over and sorts its way through, now I'm going to be looking at guys that are on the top two lines, are getting power play time, and are kicking down here cheap, 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 cheap. Try and find the cheap, 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 cheap guys. 5,300, Jugstead. 5,100, Craig Smith in Nashville facing the Islanders. Islanders were poor on defense last year. It's a great value tonight that we just found. He's got a high shot block floor. He serves on the top power play line. He serves on the second line. He's going to log some ice time, and I'll give you a little tip. Due to home ice advantage, the top line or the home team gets the last kind of right of refusal. When the line changes happen on the fly, they get to match up against what the visiting team puts on the ice first. So that allows them to play the matchups and put their top line out there against that second line. The beauty is on the road team, that second line actually winds up facing an offensive-minded top line, which means we can get some end-to-end actions and some shootouts. Not every team plays that way, but a lot of teams will send their top line out that doesn't give a crap about defense, and that'll open up some scoring opportunities for the away team's second line, which is generally cheaper. So I could target Nashville's second line on the road and be in just as good a spot as their top line, almost. And on any given night, if I match up against the softer defensive unit, bada bing, bada boom, I'm in for cheap, and then I can go attack a top line at home and build a hell of a lineup. That's my tip to you. So Craig Smith, great line. So what I want to do is I want to turn these guys back off. Let's focus on the offenses that we wanted to focus on before. Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, Toronto. And this is just how I'm doing it. You may like the Rangers. You may like Colorado at home. You may like a lot of other teams. That's great. You do you. But I'm showing you here on these guys, what I'm trying to create is the top two lines again, power play time, and I'm trying to keep it sorted by shots and blocks on goal as much as I can. Hope it doesn't brain freeze on me again. So now that it's sorted back up, I can even turn the defenseman off. And now I've just got the wings and the centerman sorted by shots and blocks. Hornquist comes to the top. He's got a humongous floor. Here, watch this. I've got Hornquist And now I've got Kessel, both with decent floors. Both, one on the second line, one on the top line, both on the power play one. When they're both on the power play one, guess who they overlap with? They overlap with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, both on the power play one. So what I've done is I've got Kessel on line 2 with Malkin. I've got Hornqvist on line 1 with Sidney Crosby, and they're all on the same power play. So I have access to Malkin and Sidney Crosby's big nights every single time, generally with an assist or them setting my guy up for the goal. And I've got it for cheaper. And what does this allow me to do? When it's cheaper, it allows me to now target premium spots in other games. Like instead of taking Sidney Crosby or Malkin at these nasty prices on Fanduel, mid and high eights, now I can go to Austin Matthews, who's in the high sevens. And now I've got access to Sidney and Malkin, and I've got Matthews on my team. I've got access to 3 of the best centers in hockey in the best matchups tonight, with Vegas supporting them with high goal totals. So I've bookended Sidney and Malkin with Kessel and Hornqvist, and I've got Austin Matthews sitting in my lineup myself. Doesn't matter which of those 5 guys goes off. I've just rostered the 3 cheap ones, and I've got access to all 5. Does that make sense? It's a great way to just kind of spread yourself out in cash. We always need to be thinking of how can we cover all of the bases in cash with 1 player or 2 players. So yeah, I've got 2 players in the Pittsburgh lineup, but now I'm done with Pittsburgh. I don't want to be overexposed to that game in case they only score 1 goal tonight. Then I go into the line with Austin Matthews, and I might look for another Toronto guy. Tavares, probably too expensive for the way that I've already taken players. So I got to come down here and find some value. Marlowe, 5,800, great. He's on the 1 with Matthews, but he doesn't have the power play time with him, which is fine. It's okay. Most of the even strength time he's out there with him. Marner's another one. He's on the second line, which gets me access to those guys, but he's on the power play line. So what are we doing? When I take the 2 and the 1, I'm kind of like doing what I was telling you about with Pittsburgh, in that I'm not stacking up that very, very top line where they're all sitting here on the 1-1-1-1-1-1. Instead, they've got a little, some guys are on little different lines and they come together on the power play. Other guys are together on the same line, but then they separate on the power play. I'm trying to spread my net out and catch the production in a high offensive game, a high offensive night tonight for those offenses. That way, I'm building my floor. I've still got the ceiling because I overlap. I stack a little bit. I've got, let's say Malkin passes to Hornqvist, who passes to Kessel, and he bangs it in. Or Hornqvist shoots, off the goalie's left pad, and bang, Kessel bangs it in. Then what I've ended up doing is I've picked up an assist and a goal, where Malkin got the assist and helped out a bunch of people that ran straight to him, but I also got pieces of that production. In fact, I did better, but I didn't have to stack the whole line to do it. I was able to take, say, 2 from this offense, 2 from that offense, 2 from that offense, a couple of one-off defensemen with high floors and cheap prices, and bang, I get the win out of my goalie, and I'm very hard to beat in cash games when I do that. And I'm teaching you a little bit of this because we're going to dive deeper this year. We're going to talk more about this year when we're talking about hockey and how to hopefully stabilize as much as possible a very, very volatile sport with a lot of long losing streaks and a lot of ups and downs. And when you hit, a lot of times you hit really hard. I would take a GPP lineup. That's more cash principles. I would take a GPP lineup and I'd go immediately say, okay, well, what if Pittsburgh comes out flat? What if Toronto comes out flat? My cash games are really, really suffering. Where could I hit and repair all of that damage in one shot? Maybe I load up on Tampa Bay. Maybe I go to Nashville. Maybe I go to Colorado. Maybe I go to Calgary, and I just load up on their top line or their second line or whatever, and I take Calgary and Nashville's second line and then top line, and just stack them up, and those 2 offenses go for 8 goals tonight. Then I'm set up really, really well in my GPP, and that can return, 20, 30 bucks on the dollar, turn around, and just pay off all of my cash lineup stuff. So those are the types of contest strategies, the types of allocations of your funds that we talk about inside DFS Army. We'll do it with hockey, we do it with football, we do it with basketball, we do it with all the major sports. If you're watching this video for the first time, you need to hit the like and you need to definitely hit the subscribe button because you need to know when these videos come out. And you need to consider becoming a VIP inside DFSArmy.com because this is where we talk in our coaching channels all the time. about what plays we like and which ones we don't like, and how we talk. And you can ask us, hey, what about this guy? What about this? Well, hey, he might not be safe for cash, but I do like him as a GPP pivot or whatever. We'll kind of talk back and forth. I'm not the pro. I'm not the guru. I'm not the end all and be all to hockey. I'm a pretty good player, with a decent track record of success. But we've got two other experts in there, in Flynn and Anthony, that are doing great jobs pumping people up and teaching them already right out of the chute. We've got guys like RK and CG that have designed this research station, and we've got guys that are working on getting an optimizer for us so that we can mass multi-entry some of these tournaments and things. Hockey's going to be lit this year. It's absolutely going to be off the chain. And then what we're going to do to mix 2 decades of metaphors there, how about that? But then we've also got the same thing going in NFL with other coaches like Football Geek and Cash Keg and Big Marley and other guys like that, the names that you've probably heard around the industry. And then you jump over and we've got Dabbing Puggle in NBA, and we've got DFS and Donuts in NBA, and Boomer's daddy Keith, if you know him from NBA, is our NBA expert that specializes in last minute pivots when game scratches happen and you scrambling at the last minute going, oh my God, what now, what now? They can guide you in the right direction there. We've got all the sports covered for one low subscription price. You'd be nuts not to invest in us or invest in yourself, to be quite honest with you, and the development of your own game, because through the group think and through the discussion is where you get better. Okay? The link is in the comments section, dfsarmy.com. Use the coupon code CHOP, CHOP, for that extra 10% off. Hopefully I see you in the inside. This is just the beginning of a long hockey season. I'll be talking more videos with hockey than I will be with written articles. I did drop some Slack notes in our coaching channels tonight for a lot of the VIPs in there about specifically where I'm going in GPPs and things too. We hope that that stuff pans out and hits. Hopefully we see you at the top of the leaderboards and we get all primed and ready to go for Sunday for the football slate. Week 5, man, can you believe it? We're approaching about, what, 30% of the NFL season? Good Lord, where does it go? Whew. All right, guys, hop in. We'll talk to you over the weekend, and I will catch you guys, I guess, on the flip-flop. Take care.